Well, I guess if Marvel is going to get nominated for anything in the Oscars this year that doesn't have the word popular in the category, I'd say this is a pretty impressive bid.
If I don't destroy the collider, none of us will have a home to go home to.
Remember, what makes you different
Let's go!
is what makes you Spider-Man.
Officer, I love you.
Wait, what?
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Spider-Man has had an especially good year. Between having some of the most memorable and, yes, even tear-inducing scenes in Avengers Infinity War to the incendiary video game from Insomniac, why are you even still watching this? I already got the click, so just go buy the game, play it. It is incredible. And now you have this one, but the most amazing thing about this film is that this one snuck up on people. The teaser trailer came out, we were like, well, the visuals look really cool on this, and of course comic fans were like, oh my god, it's Miles Morales! And it is absolutely worthy of all the praise that has been bestowed onto it. As previously said, this film revolves around Miles Morales, a just regular kid from Brooklyn. His dad's a cop, and he kinda has, not so much a loathing of his dad, just more of a kind of a divide, mainly just because Miles is a very gifted kid and really kind of against his wishes. His aptitude pretty much betrays his desire to just be a kid, and he's forced to go to a prep school, which he's not particularly happy about, and the only relative who kind of really gets him is his uncle, who kind of has his own lifestyle. He ends up stumbling upon a major battle with Spider-Man, trying to prevent Kingpin from opening a rift into another dimension. Well, in the process, Spider-Man ends up dying, but also in the process, Miles ends up getting bitten by another radioactive spider. And you think he might have gotten a mentor in Peter Parker? Well, in a roundabout way, he does. Because Kingpin was messing with folding dimensions, problem is this version of Peter Parker has become somewhat disenchanted with the life of being Spider-Man. He has loved, but he has indeed lost. He has dealt with a lot of problems when it comes to how he can be Peter Parker when basically being Spider-Man has consumed him. He's got himself a beer gut, and he just doesn't really have the enthusiasm that he used to, and even a little touch of self-loathing. So now Miles is stuck with this variation of Spider-Man to be his guide. And that pretty much goes as well as one could expect. But unfortunately, with this Spider-Man being in this dimension, it causes all sorts of anomalies within him. If he stays in this dimension any longer, he will go through full cellular degeneration and basically die. And it would be one thing to risk his time to get him back to his. Well, we end up finding out that there's a bunch of Spider-Man who fell through that crack. We end up getting Spider-Man Noir, voiced by Nicolas Cage. We get Spider-Pig, voiced by John Mulaney. We even get Penny Parker. But the one that I know fans were waiting on when they saw her in the trailer, we got Spider-Gwen, or Spider-Woman, because let's face it, that would be a bit idiotic to go around saying, hey, I'm Spider-Gwen. Gwen who? That kind of defeats the purpose of the mask. And she is voiced by Haley Steinfeld. So now not only does Miles have one Spider-Man breathing down his neck in order to learn how to use his powers, he's got a whole bunch of Spider-Man breathing down his neck trying to make sure to learn his powers. And unfortunately, it all rests on Miles' shoulders because he's the only one from this dimension. Because if any other Spider-Man try it, they would be stuck there and ultimately die. Let's talk about the animation. The animation in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is probably the best I've seen this year. Now, we've seen CGI 3D animation, and we've seen that all over the place. It's utilizing 3D animation to emulate practically every other kind of animation style you could possibly think of. I'd say probably the best to compare it to would definitely be the Lego movies. Definitely the Lego movie and definitely Lego Batman. In fact, you could even say the humor of this movie is a lot like the Lego Batman. Whereas Lego Batman did a great job just being a love letter to all things Batman, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a brilliant love letter to everything Spider-Man. I mean, if you are a hardcore Spider-Man fan, you will pick up every single Easter egg. And they launch them at you. They launch them at you mercilessly. And if you know them, you're going to have a great time. And of course, stay for the credits because you'll get another one which is equally brilliant. The film utilizes 3D to also emulate aspects of 2D animation, comic book art style, particularly classic Ditko art style, and even stop motion animation. And the fact that all of it blends so seamlessly, and the fact they actually utilize different art styles to punctuate certain aspects of the story. And also another brilliant aspect of it is when they start having peeks into other dimensions of the other Spider people, the art style changes. And they do it in a way to kind of reflect the art style of their initial comics. I mean, you could definitely look at Spider-Gwen's dimension, and you could definitely look at it going like, that's definitely the art style that you even see on the covers. And then you got Spider-Man Noir, which is of course hardcore, black and white, gritty film noir, and it looks incredible. And actually, because of that, there's a great gag regarding Spider-Man Noir and the fact that he only sees black and white. I'm not going to tell you what, but it involves a certain puzzle from the 1980s that he ends up becoming hypnotized by, and it's great. And then you've got Peter Porker, who actually brings about the classic art style of the old Warner Brothers cartoons. And you'd think that he would be such a drastic clash with everything else that goes on, but no, it works. And you think that Peter Porker, being the Looney Tunes character amidst all this other stuff, would be a tonal clash. It doesn't. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that the story lends itself to going all over the place with different styles and different tones. And this really was the only way they could have had this particular story arc from the comics take place. And this is the only way I could ever picture that they could have had all these Spider-Men come together in one movie. The script is so adept and so well balanced, and the fact that they're still able to have so much good focus on Miles Morales as the central character, and to make him such an endearing character, and to have him have a background all his own. They do an excellent job showcasing his relationship with his dad. Most other movies would want to make an antagonist of his dad, but this one says, no, his dad's still a nice person. It's just that Miles doesn't agree with him at the present time. And Miles doesn't come off as a jerk either for being antagonistic towards his dad, because you understand where he's coming from. It's an awkward position for a kid from the streets of Brooklyn who, as you see him walk through the streets, he has friends there. Kids dig him. He's just a regular kid. He likes to do street graffiti. That's all he ever wants to be. He's afraid of being exceptional. Now, there's a tradition that goes with Spider-Man, the message, of course, great power, great responsibility. This film doesn't focus on that. It's not about that at all. Actually, the focus on this is about the expectations everyone has for one person. And for Miles in the beginning, he's expected to do great things because he is a naturally bright kid. His father expects him to excel in academia, and he just wants to be a regular kid. He doesn't want these expectations thrown onto him. But then you get imbued with spider powers, and it's not enough to have the expectations of one Spider-Man looking over your shoulder, but the fact that you now have a bunch looking over your shoulder, and the fact that the stakes are on you, and the fact that you have to measure up to the legacy of not just one Spider-Man, but a bunch of Spider people, it can break you. And it's a very compelling arc for Miles Morales to go on, and it was so smart to go this route with this character. And I hope that because of how well this goes, Miles Morales has a strong future cinematically speaking. I mean, a lot of us definitely want to see him make the live action jump. They made allusions to him in the MCU, so I hope somewhere in the future we'll get that. Even in the video game, Miles Morales plays a significant role. People are ready for this character to make significant jumps, because when he goes, you get a whole bunch of other really interesting characters that go with him. I would love to see a live-action Spider-Gwen. I'd even like to see them do Silk. There's so many great variations of Spider-Man that are so fascinating in their own regard that it could work. And the great thing about this movie is that it showcases all of them. For people who are uninitiated, they are finally initiated. They get to see these other variations of the characters. I'd say the one flaw, which is point deduction worthy, is that some of the variations of Spider-Man do not really get as much focus as they should. Spider-Gwen, of course, does get a lot of good moments, a lot of great moments, actually, even before we even find out that she's Spider-Gwen. But apart from just the fact that he's there, Spider-Pig really doesn't get much in any way of a kind of an emotional arc. Penny Parker actually does get a great little moment, which actually is kind of sad. Spider-Man Noir is pretty much there for the novelty that it's Nicolas Cage, and Spider-Noir loves himself some black and white and looks at color like he just took like an entire sheet of LSD. You don't really get much in the way of emotional arc with him. Now, I'm not saying that they don't get any time to shine. In the action sequences, they all get to shine. I'm just more pointing out that you don't really get to know this variation of him as a character. But honestly, if that's the worst I can pin on this movie, then it's doing fine. I can't really think of anything more to say that hasn't already been said. I know this review's a touch late, but I just felt the need to express my love of it. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse actually is an artistic triumph. It's not just a triumph for comic book movies, and it never feels like it's a comic book movie. It's actually telling a very human story about a kid who tries to find it in himself to meet the expectations that he's going to inevitably face when he just goes into life, only thrown way out of proportions. And it's a gorgeous story that somehow is able to wrangle all the chaos to tell a beautiful story. And honestly, that's why movies like Black Panther, why Infinity War, why Ant-Man and the Wasp, why Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse are triumphs, because they use the world that they're building to tell something that's much more relatable and, frankly, much more life-affirming. And that is why I'm going to give Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a Narcotic Casserole rating of... Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that this was just a shameless Sony cash grab just to try to suckle at the teat of what Marvel's been doing right now? Or do you think that this is probably the definitive Spider-Man story? Leave it all in the comments below. And for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click, thou shalt be served.
Time to swing, just like I taught you.
When did you teach me that?
I didn't. It's a little joke for team building.
Hey guys,
Okay, who are you?
I'm Gwen Stacy.
How many more spider people are there?
Save it for Comic-Con.
What's Comic-Con?